hope y'all are doing well. Y'all look good. I have to say that, you're a good looking group of shower door people. That's for sure. I hope things are going well. It's kind of a balancing act, right? Of like having the resources that you need to supply your community with awesome shower doors, shower enclosures, and other fine glass products. Having the people, the materials, the expertise, and all that. And then there's demand, right? How many people want those products, and are you able to reach them? And it's like finding that balance between supply and demand. And it can be tricky, right? I mean, if there's way too much demand and you don't have enough manpower or resources to meet that demand, what do? How do you deal with that? Or sometimes the opposite's true. You got a bunch of trucks, bunch of guys, maybe not as much work as you like to have. How do you deal with that? So where are you at? Are you like striking the balance? Are you like nailing it? Is it perfect, or is it like a little lopsided one way or the other? Talk to me.
Need help.
Riding that thin line. That's all I got. Riding that thin line. That's it.
Well,
that's where you want to be, right?
What's more important to you, Chris? More important having more customers, or more important having less customers? I guess you have to look at that first, right?
Less quality customers rather than just more like.
Yeah, you look at the supply and demand. I mean, the old adage, or not so much an old adage, is when you have so much business that it's hard to handle, you raise your prices and you kind of throttle it. I don't know how many guys do that. I don't know if they raise their prices to do it, or just say no to customers, or what do they do?
Yeah, it's funny because I was talking to someone before we went live, and I won't say who it was because I don't want to, blow anybody's cover, but I was asking how busy is the state. Said, "Oh man, I'm really busy." And I was like, "Well, are you charging enough money?" They said, "Yeah, I think I am. I'm charging enough money." And it's like, I said, "That's great. I would love to hear that, because people think you can't really charge enough money and stay busy. And that's really not true. I mean, there are different kinds of customers out there, right? There's different clientele. There are bargain shoppers. And then there are, the more sophisticated, more affluent customers who want the best. And they're used to paying for it. They don't want to get ripped off. Nobody wants to get gouged, but people with discriminating tastes are usually willing to pay for it. They're used to it.
Well, it's either they want the best or they want it quicker, right?
Right.
And that's the other option. Are they willing to pay for the speed?
Exactly. Who was saying something?
Yeah, I was going to say, just like it's a relative term, enough. Just like expensive, it's a relative term. So one person's enough isn't the next guy is not enough, right?
Precisely. Exactly, Brian. You have to look at what caters best to your business, right? What can you handle? What's your maximum volume? And at that point, you could look at raising your prices so that the jobs you are doing at least are more profitable for you, buying you some time to hire more people or train more people, or at least get the time to go look for more people. So there is all sorts of options out there. I mean, you could lower your prices and bury yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the alternative to it.
Sure. Yeah, another option is that people don't always think about is you can make your menu a little bit shorter, right? You can stop offering some of those things on the bottom of your list of favorites. The things that you don't love to do, or the things that aren't that profitable for you. And that will free up, a little manpower to do the work that you love to do.
Sure. And then scheduling logistics, can you schedule jobs closer together so you're not losing your time traveling all over? Can you put somebody off another day so you can get 3 jobs done in one zip code as opposed to going from 3 different zip codes? Sometimes if you're upfront with a customer, they'll be obliging as long as you let them know what's going on.
Yeah, if you tell your customer, I would like to be more efficient, is that okay with you? Your customer will probably be like, I would love for you to be more efficient.
Right.
As long as it doesn't involve my shower.
Right. Yeah. As long as I don't have to, suffer because of it.
As long as I don't have to do anything.
Exactly. As long as it's not in my backyard.
The only thing you have to do is change your calendar date. I'm coming Wednesday instead of Monday.
Chris, I did exactly what you said, which was, we talked about this before. I went from essentially a full-blown residential glass company to frameless shower doors only now, starting January.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
It was a scary transition, I was getting a lot of revenue from IG replacements, and now I'm not doing any of it. And as we talked about before, no is the hardest word for any of us to say. Thankfully, I have
until you get used to it.
Yeah, right. Well, that's true. I have a great office manager who is more than willing to say no for me. But I'm on track to do triple the number of showers this year than I did last year, which is good because I need those to be able to make the ends meet. But and my revenue is going to be ish about the same. So,
Okay.
and I'm working a lot less hard. I'm not killing myself. So, and I just saw you, Brian Schwartz, when I said that, and I thought he needs to hear that.
Yeah, you and I have talked about it a little bit before.
Yep.
And I'm curious to know, like, when you made this switch, did you also increase your marketing? And how did you find, I don't know how to really say it. How did you find more showers to do to fill in the time that you now had freed up from not doing all the other stuff, the window replacements?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Whatever else.
It's a matter of focus. So I really didn't change the dollar amount that I was marketing to or marketing from. I changed the focus. We just stopped marketing to all the other things that we were doing, especially IG replacements. And so by changing the focus, that put more dollars towards getting shower door quotes from our pay-per-click campaigns. So it just, like I said, it's focus. It's really just focus. That's made all the difference in the world. So,
and did you adjust your pricing on shower doors when you switched over to somewhat give you the upper hand on getting more of the jobs you were quoting and getting calls for?
Yes, I adjusted my price, but not for that reason. I adjusted my price because I found that my price was just a little bit too high, so I lowered it a little bit. Okay. And yeah, so I lowered it, but again, it wasn't for that reason in particular. And the thing is now that I'm doing basically one product, I have the ability to wrap my head around it. I'm just a glass guy, as I like to say. And so I don't have the ability to wrap my head around IGs, and I was manufacturing IGs for a while, and doing mirrors and tabletops, and not that I did much of that, and shower doors. Now, actually with Greg Stoll's help, and Billy Britt yesterday or the other day, thank you again. I'm able to really hone in on figuring out what it is that this beast is called shower doors. And it's not so hard when you narrow it down to really four things for me to be able to forecast, and everything focuses off of that, which is the number of days in a month, working days, your average sale, your closing rate percentage, and how many showers I want to install a week, which translates into a month, of course. Once I've got those four numbers, everything else comes off of that. So I've been able to focus on that, is my point. And that's helped me to understand the business side of it, to be able to translate that out into everything else that I do. And again, Greg Stoll, thank you. He's been an amazing resource for that.
Wow, thanks for sharing that. That's great. I mean, I love the direction this is going. Yeah, I remember when I made that decision, and actually, I don't know if you've heard this story before, but I was talking to one of my competitors in the area, another glass company. We were, another glass shop owner. We were talking. He was like, "Oh yeah, there's enough work doing frameless shower doors that someone could just do that exclusively." And I was like, "Oh man, that's a great idea." I got the idea from my competitor to do that, and I started doing that, and that was like the best decision I ever made. It just totally revolutionized the whole business. Kind of like what Brian's talking about there. There's something about it that without even really trying necessarily, once you start to focus on something, you kind of just go there. It's just like anybody who kayaks knows, like if you're kayaking and like you look in a direction, you'll start to move in that direction just automatically without even trying. So it's important not to look, someplace you don't want to go, because you'll end up going there, and yeah, once our focus changed to just doing shower doors appeared. I mean, there's like plenty of them showed up, and it just kind of, it was like a problem that solved itself without even really having to try that hard.
Yeah, and again, as Greg always says, know your numbers, right?
Yeah.
I know a lot of you guys say that, and a lot of you guys know your numbers, but I know a lot of you guys don't know your numbers. And I don't know all my numbers by any stretch, so I'm not tooting my own horn here. But I do know a few of my numbers now, and that has helped me tremendously to be able to, like I said, forecast what I want to do for the next year. And it's exciting when you start looking at the numbers and you're like, yeah, it's not going to take me much to be able to increase my bottom line, or my top line anyway, from this year, because I know what it looks like. You just have to settle on a few things. And my numbers were off. My forecast numbers were off for this year somewhat, as far as my number of installs that I could do or did, and the number of estimates that I'm doing. But thankfully, I had guessed partly at a average sale number, I guess low. And so while my installs are low compared to what I wanted, my actual revenue is on pace. So bully for me, that was a lucky strike. But so I've modified that for my numbers for next year already. And it's a much more realistic view, but I hadn't had a good view of what my numbers should be, because I had all of the other things in there, IG replacements and everything else, that I couldn't focus on one thing. So focus.
Brian,
Yeah.
I don't know enough about IG units. Never done any. But if you were to take an IG unit and compare it to a shower door, is your profit on the IG unit better or worse than a standard shower door? Let's say a door and panel, which is the most common.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And my answer is, I don't know. My answer is, I don't know, because I wasn't able to focus on and understand what I needed to do and how I needed to do it. I thought it was actually more profitable, just lower dollar value. My average sale was $450 for IGs. Actually, that was everything combined. Now my average sale is obviously significantly higher than that. I get a lot fewer sales, but I'm also not running myself ragged every day, running around chasing those jobs. I had an 80% closure rate most months on IGs, but just because I had an 80% closure rate doesn't mean I was profitable. And it certainly meant, even though I was closing all those jobs, I was doing all those jobs and I was wearing myself out.
So, all right. So now the first of the year, so you've gone 3/4 of the year. And in the 3/4 of the year, focusing only on frameless shower doors, what's your closing rate?
Yeah. So I forecasted, or I thought I was going to do 70%. Turns out that was pie in the sky. My actual closing rate this year to date is 52%. I'd be actually very curious to know how everybody else falls in that. I would also hazard to guess that a lot of people don't actually know. I didn't know, really, for shower doors anyway, prior to this year. And so go ahead.
I was going to say, that's a really good thing. This goes way back to 2 years ago when Christina was asking the question, who keeps the KPIs, right? Key performance. So you want to take a look at, how are you judging your closing rate? Is it based on every inquiry, every phone call, or only when you book an appointment, you actually go to do the measure and close the sale? So what are you basing it on?
I'm basing it on the number of quotes that I do, whether we go out and do the quote and do the measure, or it's a phone quote. I'm starting to change my opinion about the efficacy, I guess, of digital only sales. Thank you, Billy. And that's a little bit of a scary proposition for me, but I forgot the question. How do I calculate it? So it really is, if we do an estimate, or we've been asked to do an estimate, that's when. Yeah, if it's just a inquiry, I don't care.
So if somebody calls on the phone and asks for an estimate of a 5-foot stall, and you give them that estimate without any kind of a pre-qualification, you're still counting that as a potential estimate, and that's in your mix of numbers for your closing ratio, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So you've heard of the sales pipeline, or even the funnel. You talk about a funnel, right? So you start off on a funnel like this, and this is all your potential business. And as you start narrowing it down, the point of the funnel is your actual sale. But along the way, there are opportunities, and the opportunity has to get to the point where they agree to do an in-home measurement. Then you give them so each step, you're getting closer and closer to that final sale, right? And so your whole key is, how do I get more of them down out of the bottom of the funnel and cash in your pocket, right? So you do blanket advertising, and you're getting calls from all over the place. They're not necessarily qualified leads at that point. So as you qualifying, now you have less in your funnel, right? Because some of them are, oh, it's way out of my price range, or I had no idea, I just wanted to get a price.
They live in a different state, maybe.
Yeah, all sorts of things, right?
Yeah.
So I think you would do yourself a better justice of, how many do you sell on a pre-qualified estimate? where you've had a chance to educate them and they know what they're buying, as opposed to calling you and ABC glasses down the street from you and the third guy that they got off the internet. It's got a couple of Google ratings. You know,
Right.
you've got to build value for that and let them understand why to do business with you. And then you'll see your closing rate go up.
And I've considered that. And I guess the reason I haven't changed my numbers based on that is I don't know where that line is. What's qualified? Where do you separate that?
Well, if somebody calls you up and asks a price for a 5-foot stall, do you just give them a price for a 5-foot stall, or you start asking questions? What type of glass, what finish, you know, and qualify them and say, I
Right.
know you called and you wanted a door and panel. Did you even consider the sliding? Did you consider, you know, Cambridge, Ultra, whatever you want to call it? Did you consider other options, or do you want to talk about those? You get involved with them. Now they want to do business with you. So when it comes to the time to give them the final price, they've got a big comfort level that you've spent some time with them instead of just spitting out a price. But if it was that customer that you simply spit a price out with very little qualification, you're not doing yourself any favors at all.
Yeah, and it's a fine balance. I have always said, and I still contend this, but again, I'm starting to change my opinion a little bit. I have always said that when I give a price over the phone or the email or whatever, I look just like everybody else in the marketplace.
Right.
When I show up at their doorstep, that's where I shine. That's where I have the ability to talk and let them know how much I know about the subject. Ask them questions, just like you were saying, and that will never change. And that's probably everybody, you know. But if they just want a number, you know, I'll give them what they want to a point, because I mean, yes, I'm going to try to ask them questions, but some of them don't even want that. They're just like, just give me a number. Okay. You're hurting yourself really by only wanting just a number, but I'm not going to convince you of that. So here's your number.
Why not?
Why not what?
Why wouldn't you convince them? I would make the argument, and I feel pretty good about this data. 20% of the people that'll call you have no intentions of buying from you because, and there's a study on this, because they're just trying to validate a bid they already got from somebody else, and they're going to use your number to justify going along, or they don't trust their contractor sub. But if your price is in line with that price, then they'll keep going down the path. And so they literally have no intentions of ever buying from you. And so by not drilling down on that request to give a price, you could be wasting, like you're saying how you're managing your time, which I fucking love how you're doing that. I think you're on a very, vision drives decision. You're creating your vision. But as you really start to drill down on your time, you need to weed out that 20% because that's valuable time. If you could buy 20% more time on your week, that's a lot. And I'm telling you, 20% of the people that call you will never buy from you. And now the question becomes, do you know how to tease out whether they're ill-intentioned or good intention while preserving their autonomy? Because they might buy from you in the future unless you treat them like a piece of shit on the front side. And so most people won't even go through this exercise of, like Bill said, qualifying them because they just don't know how. Right. But you should really look into that, because as you get further down the road and hitting your numbers here, you're going to ask yourself, how do I buy more time? How do I buy more time? And a lot of it's in that 20% that's going to call you just to get information, validate another bid. Like Chris said, might live in another state. We used to have that. I'd pitch these people for an hour. I'm like, oh man, I'm crushing it. I'm giving these people gold. And they're like, oh yeah, okay, well, we'll make a decision. We're building a house in Michigan. I'm going, in Michigan, I'd be pissed at these people. And then I'm thinking, why didn't I just fucking ask where they were before I did this hour-long dissertation on what I know about shower doors? I mean, I just dragged my dick in the dirt for an hour for nothing.
You were
But
honing
real
your
estate
skills.
agents do that because they're just trying to give a number to the buyer. That way they can knock it off the sales price, and
You got to
you got to find out. You got to
qualify.
find out, like, why are you calling me? Do you really want this, or do you want a number?
The mastery to this is to qualify in the beginning while, again, I want to be very clear, while preserving their autonomy, because even though they
Right.
might not be buying right then, they might buy from you in the future, especially if the other guy's so low and they're not getting back to him or her. And then they have a change of heart or an epiphany and they say, you know what? I fired that contractor. I really liked what you had to say and how you handled me. I'd like to do business with you. So qualifying, I think, is by far, it's such a subjective thing to talk about closing ratios because of, like how Bill said,
Right.
at what point are you considering a live opportunity? I would say closing ratio for me, 90%. Why? Because I know very like pretty confidently when they're calling, when we start having these questions, how I unpack it, if it's even a legitimate opportunity. We call it the proof of life, like these hostage negotiators, like, oh, you're negotiating for a hostage? How do I even know there's a hostage in there? Which is a legitimate question. And so now the question becomes, how do I even know there's a shower door opportunity to be had here?
How do I know you're not a robot?
How do I know you're not a AI robot? But you start asking these kind of
Qualifying
interesting
questions.
Yeah.
Qualifying questions. You got, man.
You got to be careful on the question. I will say, ask questions, get their why. You have to be very deferential. And when you're doing this, especially over the phone, because you don't have body language, I would argue asking questions isn't what you really want. What you really want is to gather information. Because depending on how you ask a question, you can put people on the defensive. Like if I said, hey, Billy, why are you wearing that green football shirt? His initial reaction is going to be, what's wrong with this green football shirt? You know what I mean? And so I might say something like, seems like you had a reason for wearing that green shirt. That's actually not a question. It's more of a statement. And he'll tell me, oh, this is the college I went to. I love this shirt. It's my favorite shirt. Oh, it seems like you like college football. And, I start unpacking it that way. But qualifying is such an important thing, Brian. Yeah, I mean, it's the most important thing if you're trying to preserve your time.
The interesting thing is your 90% might be my 52%. And what I mean is that your 90% is after you've already qualified all of those people. And to Bill's point, my 52% will probably go up when I start weeding out some of those. But the important thing I think to note in all of this is for those of you guys that aren't keeping track or don't know what your numbers are, start with something. And that's what I've done. I've started with something. Now I'll refine and hone those numbers as I go, but I have started with something, and it's a consistent something.
It's a
when
baseline
you're consistent with
for
it,
you.
it's a baseline. And the consistency is the key, because if you're all over the map, then your number is crap. It doesn't mean anything. And so my numbers are consistent, but the numbers that I'm pulling from are consistent. And so I know that for me, the 52% is accurate. And again, it might be your 90%, and it's the same number, just different. If that makes any sense at all.
It wasn't meant to leapfrog. I was just making a point
of
it's good. Weeding out the trash.
Yeah. I'm just saying that you got to start somewhere.
Mhm.
And for
Yes.
those guys out that are listening to this that don't know, I just simply started somewhere, and now I have the ability to understand my numbers and manipulate from there.
And Brian, I think you were asking earlier, kind of on other people. I don't know what our win rate is off the top of my head right now, and you guys have brought up several great points about how to calculate that. But somebody in this call at one point mentioned that if your win rate is above 70%, depending on how you calculate it, your price is too low.
Too low, right?
Mhm.
So there is a healthy win rate at a certain point, and that is something that I've been using as a metric to kind of understand where we live and where our business lives and how our pricing looks and all of that good stuff. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, I agree. At some point you get to the top of the bell curve and you start falling off the other side of the bell curve. And it's, you
I
gotta
guess
find the top of the bell curve.
is that how you figure out, because pricing in everybody's area is different, right? I mean, I'm in San Antonio, whatever. My pricing is different from someone in another state, in another part of the state, in a more rural area of that state. Do you just price up until you just start noticing a dip in sales? I mean, I don't know. How do you, where do you figure out what that number is?
Brian
me-
Schwartz has actually answered that before, and has modified as he went along. I don't do that, and I don't know where the top of the bell curve is either.
Right.
So, can you enlighten anything on that, Brian?
I mean, I had no real formula, I guess, to it. I just I took some numbers and just kind of played around with them. I do all my pricing. All my pricing is done through FHC, the shower door design program. So
Mhm.
I have my glass costs set in there. What I charge, for different types of glass, whether it be 3/8 clear, low iron, with or without shower guard. I have all my hardware in there at specific prices for different finishes and colors. So when I enter everything in there and I calculate it all, the price comes up and that's what I spit out. When I noticed that, and I try to get as much feedback from people if and when I can, when I do lose a job. And it's often due to price. We found someone that was significantly lower. I try to get an idea. There's been times where I've gotten the quote from the competitor sent to me for review, where I can kind of take a look at, what they're charging and where I'm off. I've tweaked it a little bit from time to time, knocked $10 off each hinge, maybe $1 or $2 off each clip, which in the grand scheme of things, adds up to quite a bit. And when I kind of found that happy mid ground, I kind of just stuck with that and just wrote it out. That being said, the past week or so, I've lost quite a few jobs due to lower bids from competitors, significantly lower, where it wouldn't even make sense for me to drop a price to come close to that, because I'd be shooting myself in the foot. And that seems to be an issue in my particular area as of late. There seems to be a lot of guys out there just, it's almost like they're not even marking up the glass or the hardware, and they're just putting these things in for a day's pay. And it's like, I can't even fathom doing something like that. So I just chalk it up as a loss and, hope for the next one.
Those people won't be around for that long.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about them for the long.
We constantly ask for feedback on pricing and things from customers, especially when we lose a job. And there was a point in time last year that we were losing Cambridges left and right. And we got a lot of feedback from customers on that. So we had to check that out, and it turned out that the pricing from CRL was astronomical compared to, you know, a Serenity or a Crescent, for example. And we had to kind of look at our labor and look at our margin and figure out what gives here so we can actually sell this product and not lose jobs over it, you know, because there could be multiple showers in a house and we lose it because of a Cambridge. You know, we can't just do that. So it could be product specific. So it's worth looking into.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point.
So as we talk about moving the prices and letting the market, you know, move the prices for us up and down, Brian's doing it, Steve's consider both Brian's. Have anybody that's considered moving their pricing spent any amount of time changing the way they go about selling or educating on the EQ side of this? Because it took me personally, we've been doing this 20 years now, it took me 15 years to get my stubbornness and ego out of the way to say, you know what, I'm working so hard, just like everybody on this call, but I'm working for people that I aspire to kind of accumulate wealth like they are. And I'm thinking to myself, if I work as hard as I am now for the rest of my life, I'm not even going to sniff at that. What am I missing? We have a factory, we have all the trucks, but there's no way. It just doesn't add up. And it was the EQ. I'm telling you, right? It's never the price. A very small amount of, it's very easy to get attracted to the price, especially if they're dealing with three people that didn't know what I was talking about. And they're like, well, I need glass and this one's the cheapest, I'll just get it. But when you can hit an emotional chord with somebody, especially when you know what you're doing when it comes to that part, I promise you this, the price becomes the third or fourth most important thing. Now, it's not easy to get to that point. It's a very perishable skill, but that's when you unlock the next level. It's how it's delivered. How are you qualifying? How is your emotional intelligence? You know, most of us, I know in us, I was never even taught sales. I watched my father do it from a young age, but there was no systematic approach to it. You know, when you see, I just kind of, you know, learned to be polite, you know, combed my hair, tucked my shirt in, said, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, you know, take my shoes off at the door, you know, like that stuff. But I never really was taught like how to perfect the soft skills.
Mhm.
And once I really spent time on that, that changed everything. And it kind of separated us from the people that were just, you know, pricing to the market. And we have a lot of competition down here too, guys. I mean, we have a nice like contingent of customers, but we have a lot of competition too. And I promise you, we are not the cheapest. But our sales are going up every year. So what's the training, you know, the sales training, because all of us here are craftsmen. And it'll become a point where you say, geez, I don't want to be lowering my price. I want more. I need to reinvest in my business. I need more cash. My employees have been here. They need more. They want benefits. Well, where's the money going to come from? The only way is, you know, through the sales portal, in my opinion. And that requires whoever's in charge of that to be upping their game there as well. You know, as installers, we find tips and tricks to make these things go faster and better. Mm-hmm. It's like the 10,000 hour rule. Once you get to doing 10,000 hours of installing, you're a master at it. I mean, everybody on this call can do an install. Perfect. But how many people are spending 10,000 hours learning how to sell? Because that's an art. It really is. And, and you know, when you can wrap your head around that, it changes. The price will no longer be an issue.
If you gotta do is EQ, what do you mean by EQ? What?
Emotional intelligence. There's IQ and EQ, and a lot of people would argue EQ is way more important than IQ.
Yeah.
That's
So,
easy
Mike,
for
like,
me
how to-
because my
how to
IQ
read-
is like 0.
See, I was thinking the same thing about myself. It's like, yeah, my EQ is way higher than my IQ.
I can barely read a page of a Harry Potter book.
Exactly.
So,
I
Mike,
can
like,
barely add, but we're making these shower enclosures fit in like nothing. It's
Right.
crazy, right?
Yeah.
how to read a room, how to understand when what the customer is really asking. They ask about, well, what about the price? But they're really not asking about the price, or asking about something else. That's EQ, Mike.
Right. What you want to try and do is turn the tables on the customer. Instead of you hoping to do business with the customer, you want the customer hoping to do business with you. And to do that, you're building your reputation, your knowledge, you're adding the value. I think that when they start comparing 3 companies that they've never met, nobody's made an impression on them. But if they've met you, if you've made your mark in your community, whether it's advertising, social media, whatever it is you do so that they are familiar with you, you're going to get the edge over the other 2 that haven't done that. They want to do business with you. They have a comfort level. They're calling you. It changes everything. I agree with Keith. The price is probably 4th on your list of importance at that point. And that's where you have to flip the switch. So instead of you hoping to do business with them, you want the game to be played where they're hoping you'll do business with them. And it's a great scenario to be in, where they're coming to you because of you did their neighbor and their neighbor's happy. So you've already got word of mouth working in your favor. At that point, it's your job to lose, right? They already want to do business with you. You just got to give them that comfort level, show them your knowledge, do everything else professionally, and you've got the job. It's not dependent on price. It's not.
Yeah,
I find that one of the
only if you
biggest
let it
battles.
be, in your head. I mean, it's like if you let it become about price in your head, you're gonna communicate that, and your insecurity, you're gonna communicate to the customer. It's like, and there have been so many times when I've gotten into a negotiation with someone, and said, you know what, I'm not sure this is the right thing for you. I'm not sure and kind of pulling the carrot back away, and it'll make them kind of lunge forward. Well, wait, not so fast. It's like, I think I do want that, and it's something. It's not, you can't do it in a manipulative way. You can't do it in a it's not a trick. It's just something that you have to sense and read, and it's like, make them realize that they want what you've got. Make them realize that that they want it. It's a dance that you really have to practice a lot, and all sales situations are not the same, and my conversion rate may not be the same as Keith's. If we're offering the exact same product at the exact same price in the exact same market, he may still close more than I will, because he's just better at it than I am. I mean, that's something I have to take into account too. It's price is a factor, yeah, and then your reputation is a huge factor. But it's like, then there are these things of just being able to negotiate with somebody, and sensing, like what's being said here. What are they really trying to tell you? What are they really need? Is it a shower door, or is it something deeper than that?
And Brian, Jordan, I think that's kind of what you were hitting on earlier about getting more in front of the customer, where you can, like Keith was saying, that emotional connection versus over the phone. Because once you get over to the customer, and then you start actually going through the process and giving them the options of what's good, what's not, then you really start to form that emotional connection with them. And I've done that in the past few weeks with some pretty big jobs on houses, where you walk them with the builder and like, well, they don't want anything here, they don't want anything here, they don't want anything here, but they want this splash panel in like the kids' room. And then when you get to you meet with the customer and you say, well, how old's the kid? Well, they're 5 or 7. Like, do you really want a giant piece of glass covering up half the tub enclosure, to where you're trying to reach in there, help the kid, all this kind of stuff? And then they really think like, you kind of put nuggets in there and say like, just put a shower curtain on that for now. Let's do everything else in the house. And a few years later, when the kids are older, give us a call back. And then you start kind of getting that emotional connection. And I figured that when you start turning away things in houses, that really makes them want to buy more from you. And it's a trickle effect, but I see what you were saying earlier about how you can get in front of the customer. It's like, you got them, but over the phone, it's a little bit harder because you can't really get all those items, kind of covered over the phone,
Yeah, it's a give and take for sure.
Right.
And I've heard so many times from, I have, and my office manager has heard so many times that customers have said, I'm extremely knowledgeable. And what do they have to compare against? My competition. That's because who else knows? The general customer doesn't generally know, the average customer doesn't generally know half of what we know about showers. And I don't go in and do a big dog and pony show and, try to wow them with what I know. I'm just simply trying to educate.
Mhm.
And I think that's the biggest deal is educate. But I'm also building relationship, which goes back to what everybody's saying, but Keith in particular is you have to build a relationship. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter. And so I try to make connections with customers, not from a sales perspective, but from a genuinely curious perspective. I always use this example. I don't know if it's a good one or not, but if I go into somebody's home and their last name is Frankenstein, and I see a painting on the wall, and the last name on the whoever signed it is Frankenstein, guess what my next question is going to be? I can't paint to save my life. I can't make a respectable stick figure. And so I'm genuinely curious about who painted that painting, if it's the person I'm talking to, because I'm impressed with painting. The fact that somebody can paint and I can't. And so I ask them about it, and there's a connection. Whether it's them or not is irrelevant. It's about building that relationship. And again, I'm not doing it from a sales perspective. I'm simply doing it because I'm curious about it, just like you would be with anybody else, whether you're trying to sell to them or not. And that builds that rapport.
Nice. Well put.
You were going to say something earlier, Bill. I think you were. What was it?
I was, but I can't remember now.
He started to like,
I know, and I can't remember. I'm getting too old for that.
Pretty rare. Pretty rare.
I hear you.
No,
Kind
that's a
of
good. Oh, go ahead, Christina.
Sorry. Kind of related to this conversation, we were talking about pricing, we're talking about managing pricing, we're talking about keeping tabs on pricing. And especially if you're in a competitive market, this is something you're doing all the time. And it's something you will continue to have to do all the time. Even though you're building value, even though you're building relationships with your customers, there ultimately are still budgets, bottom lines, and expectations that have to be met. It's a whole package, value package that you're trying to create. So in the spirit of that, tiny shameless plug for Smart Builder. They make it very, very easy to update pricing or update margins or make small adjustments kind of across the board. If you want to see how something is going to look, or if you notice your Cambridge slider pricing is very high. So, which is a great segue into, if you read Chris's newsletter that just came out, we have a Facebook page for Smart Builder users, Smart Toolbox users. So if you aren't on that, but you are a Smart Toolbox user, I highly recommend you get on there, because we're talking about all kinds of enhancements and voting on different enhancements we'd like to see, and how to use the software, how everybody else uses the software. And it's very much in the spirit of the Shower Door Professionals page. So thank you, Chris, for fostering such a lovely community that has inspired us to create this like tiny sub community of Smart Toolbox users as well. So
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that. And thanks for writing that little blurb for the newsletter too. Facebook, like in my opinion, is really not very good for much of anything. With the exception of like these groups. I mean, these groups are really what makes Facebook like worthwhile at all. I mean, every once in a while I get to see a picture of my grandkids on there. I mean, that's pretty cool, But and then there's shower door professionals. But then this group, these things are great sources of support. Where like other people are doing, the same thing you are, and they've already made all the mistakes. So you can just kind of make a post and 10 people will jump in and answer it. And so that's really cool. I'm glad that they started that and that we had the chance to share it. Well done.
Brian, I remember now.
All right, here we go.
Christina, you and Chris finished, but I do remember now.
We're finished.
We're
You
good.
better say it quick before you forget.
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. Based on your closing ratio, it could be good for you to calculate how many of the calls that you get that you're yielding do you actually get to go to the house? Because that's a bigger sale for somebody to agree to let you to their house to give that than it is just giving an estimate over the phone or even spending a half hour with them over the phone. We've found that like when people come into our showroom, we have this big conference table there. If we can get them to sit and get relaxed, you'll have a lot better chance closing a deal than if you're making your presentation with them standing, because they're always itching to leave. Once they get down, their defenses come down, they're sitting and relaxing. Much higher closing ratio. So the same thing is you're going to have a much higher closing ratio if you actually can qualify it to the point where you can get to the house. So maybe that should be, I don't know if you have inside salesmen, outside salesmen, other people answering the phone other than you, but if you get to that point, that should be their goal to get them qualified enough where you can get an appointment to meet them face to face. Then your closing ratio will go up. So that's a pretty good KPI to keep, is out of these calls, how many did we actually go to the house to give the estimate, not give an estimate remotely?
Yeah, and that's a good point. I have traditionally gone to the customers and pushed my, not that I really had to push my office manager to get me in front of the customer. To the point where sometimes I would show up and I didn't have any business being there. And so we kind of had to dial that back. But I've had a bit of a recent change in the last, I don't know, month or two, where I've started, I guess, acquiescing and giving the customer what they ask for, which is giving them a number over the phone, or, via email.
Or a range of numbers, right?
Yeah.
That might be a better term.
Yeah. And so that's a recent phenomenon for me.
That's right.
Because I've always wanted to get in front of them. But my time is difficult, just like so many of us on here. It's me and my office manager, and I've got a very part-time helper that helps install when I need it. And so I was explaining to Billy the other day, I had an incredible, for me, May and June, and July and August stunk. Why? Because the pipeline wasn't full anymore, because I put so much focus on the installs, because I had to, that I was still doing going out to the customer, but I wasn't able to get to different terminology. I didn't get the quotes out to them quick enough, and they'd already gone with somebody else. My fault. I own it. But at some point, there's only so many hours in the day, and there's only so many hours that I'm willing to work at this point. And it's not like I'm cutting out at 32 hours a week. It's more like 50 or whatever it is. So it's not a matter of not working hard. The point is, at some point, I just, you got to be done for the day or for the week or whatever, for sanity's sake. And so again, May and June were great. July and August suffered because of it. And so I'm trying to find a happy medium where I can level that out and maybe have less of a great May and June, but a better July and August. And overall, the numbers go up. That's where I'm headed. So that's why I'm starting to look at giving some of the numbers over the phone or via email real quick
Hey, Kurt, are
instead
you
of trying to
using,
get to their house.
are you using follow up, or have you heard of follow up?
I have heard of it. I'm not using it. I might go that route at some point.
I think it would help you tremendously answer a lot of your questions and be able to get back to customers, fairly quick.
Mhm.
I don't go out to job sites unless the customer's already signed a signature agreement. They send over pictures with a size. I give them an estimate. I got my own spreadsheet built out, and I don't go out to their house until they have that price and they agree pretty much to go with us. And we get them that price within 10, 15 minutes, and it's on to the next job. But follow-up definitely is a big game changer for us, since we've actually made that transition, getting out of IGs just strictly to showers.
Nice. How many salespeople and install crews do you have?
Frances, my wife, she's the one that takes care of all of it. She answers the calls, and just pretty much takes care of all of it. And then she'll, over the phone, she'll tell them, hey, I'm going to send this over to you right now. Did you get it? Yeah. Can you send this picture to me? We get the picture. Can you send over some sizes? Cool. Put it in our spreadsheet or Showers Online or FHC, whichever you use. Let it generate. Put your profits in there. Mark it up however you do. Give them the price. We give them clear, Starfire, waterproof protection options. And then they're like, well, what's Starfire? We send them a picture of what Starfire looks like. What's waterproof protection? We'll send a picture of that. And we get back to them so quick. They're just like, wow, no one has got me an estimate that fast, because they're waiting for, Mrs. Smith to come 2 days later and give them an estimate. And then the Joneses brothers are over there a week later, barely getting there, and then another week to get them an estimate. So we get them that estimate right then and there.
Right. How many install crews do you have?
One truck.
Okay.
2 guys.
And where do you fall in that? Are you in the office, or are you? There's a reason I'm asking.
I just actually got hired a guy that's actually went out and did final measures. So once they signed the signature agreement saying, yeah, we're going to go with you, then I would go out and confirm the sizes that they provided. As long as they're within an inch, 2 inches, then that estimate we gave is going to stand. If they're a whole foot off, then we'll redo the whole thing. But then once you get out there, then you take your dog treats, and they got dogs, you give them a dog treat to get that emotional connection that you were talking about with them, and then throw in the add-ons, if, towel bars or rope hooks. And so, but once I'm out there, that's where I do the rest and collect the deposit. And that's pretty much what I do.
Okay. This helps me to understand where I fall in the whole system of where everybody else is. I guess follow-up is a great tool. And this is going to sound strange. I don't know that I've got the time. I don't have the time right now to devote to it. I know, and everybody's going, yeah, but it takes so much time off of your hands. I get it.
I don't have time to sharpen my saw.
I know.
Maybe right now would be
I
the
know.
best time if you're transitioning from getting out of all the IGs and stuff, because that was my hardest thing, is letting go of all that. But now it's like I freed up so much time because I'm not dealing with all of the little miscellaneous pieces of all that. But anyways, yeah, I mean, if you're in that transition right now, getting out of Windows and stuff, you should. I don't know. I hear so many people talk about all the little stories they have and what can we do and what about this, and it's like follow up. get into follow-up. It's really it's a scary that transition getting out of IGs to go into showers, it's that same feeling getting into follow-up. Once you get it, you'll be happy you did.
Yeah, I've been considering it for quite a while. Yeah. And
Talk to
Robert, I'm a
Rob.
little bit
Rob will definitely take care of you.
yeah, I've talked to him. I'm a little bit disappointed he was so slow in his response. I'm just kidding. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I'm a little bit slow to move. We'll see.
There you go. Food for thought, right? There's another solution out there. Well, all right, everybody. It's getting late. As old timers, we need to, get on with it. But thanks for coming. Great topic. We'll see you again next week.